Welcome everyone to MailFuzz TV. I am Peter, and today I'm going to be talking about the X-Files Season 2, Episode 4. It's called Sleepless. So, spoilers for the episode. This one stars Tony Todd as an ex-Vietnam vet who is, well, you're not an ex-vet, you're just a vet. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Anyway, he has developed powers to effectively kill people by them just seeing, like, dreams, effectively, where they see fire, so they get burned and they die from that, even though it's a little Freddy Krueger, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. It never once popped into my head the entire episode as I was watching it, because it plays very differently. It plays more like a telepathic illusion that just happens to be lethal. But now that I'm saying it out loud, it's like, oh, that's a little Freddy Krueger. Tony Todd, of course, did not play Freddy Krueger, but he did play Candyman, which is, not a million miles away from that. So, no, interesting. We also have Stephen Williams as a guest star in this episode, who's one of those sort of B-movie actors who pops up with a lot of things. He's kind of the replacement for Deep Throat. He seems to know Deep Throat, because he mentions a colleague or a friend who gave his life for this, and he's not willing to do that, but he still shows up. He still brings in Mulder and gives him a file on everything that's going on. He is credited here as Mr. X. They never called him that in the episode. That's a little funny to me because I'm a Resident Evil fan, and in Resident Evil 2, one of the villains, one of them, the bosses that you have to deal with is called Mr. X. So that's just a little bit of flavor for my perspective is the word. I can't speak today, apparently. This is a good sign for a show which consists entirely of me talking. But yeah, so this is a solid episode. It's got much like last episode had the scenes where the various victims are being talked to by the electronic devices. This one has a kind of a similar thing where we get 3 or 4 different sequences where a different character, including the cold open, of course, which makes a lot of sense, goes through one of these phantom incidents, if we want to call them that. Hallucinations, whatever you want to call them. The opening scene is someone who turns out to be the lead scientist who did all these experiments to soldiers at the start of the 70s. He thinks he sees a fire. He calls the fire brigade, and he is dead. When they show up, there's no fire. Like, they actually play it really well at the start of the episode, where we see a fire when he does, but when the firefighters come in and they come up to the room and they're checking to see if the door's like warm and it's cold, so they're like, oh, let's go in, let's see what we can do. And when they go in, they find the guy lying there dead, and there's a fire extinguisher next to him, but there's no physical evidence anywhere that there's a fire. However, when Scully does the autopsy a little bit later, she says that there is kind of some signs internally. Basically, none of the, as she puts it, none of the primary physical evidence that there's a body's been burned are there, i.e. his skin is not burned. Nothing on the exterior is burned. But internally, some of what his body's doing kind of does imply there has been burns. So it's like, again, as she puts it, it's like his body thought it was on fire and was reacting appropriately. Which is fun. It's a fun little mechanic. I'm not sure how consistent it is throughout the episode, because when the second guy gets killed by like a firing squad type thing, and they say that, oh, there's no bullet wounds, but he does have like cracks or fractures in his bones underneath the skin, I thought, well, that doesn't seem like something the body could do on its own. That still feels like it's just straight up like a supernatural force is doing it, which I kind of like the idea that all the evidence was really subtle, because it was just kind of some stuff that your body would do in the event of certain things. But regardless, these sequences are still very good, and they tell a story. The first one is just really good at setting up the intrigue of what the episode is. When you get to the second one, it's more about evolving what the perpetrator, Tony Todd's character, Cole, what he's actually doing this for, why he's taking this murderous rampage, but with very specific targets. He's not just killing any random person. In fact, he is doing what he believes is just. He is executing vengeance on the rest of his team that he was in Vietnam with and the doctors who did this to them, because, well, let's get into the backstory here. I feel like I was about to say it in like one quick sentence there when there's actually a lot to detail here. So, because they were losing Vietnam, shady parts of the government and military started messing with scientists to try and build better soldiers. And the sleep doctor, who's the guy that dies in the opening scene, he basically developed a way for these soldiers to never have to sleep. They take some pills for serotonin, which is what the body produces when you're sleeping, plus a few other things, and cuts out a part of their brain. They've all got scars in the back of their neck. And the idea being that when you're sleep deprived, you're more aggressive, you're more on edge, and this makes you better for a particular type of military mission. The problem is, though, is not only did this really mess them all up, and it sounds like none of them have slept since Vietnam, like they're all still unable to sleep, despite feeling tired in so many ways, but they can't just physically do it. Once they stopped getting orders, they were so, like, entrenched in everything they were doing, they just kind of started making up their own orders. And the way that the one guy they go to see who was on the team who talks about it tells it, they just started picking targets. So they started killing random farmers, women, and then the big sort of like dramatic ending to the story is that what the biggest thing they ever did was they went to a school and killed a bunch of children. And it's the idea that all this stuff sort of put them in this mental state, and they just went on this kind of continuous, we're still soldiers, we still have a mission rampage. So obviously a big part of this is taking this idea that vets aren't treated well when they come home and they're put through hell when they're on tour. It's taking those kind of ideas and like ramping it up to, you know, 1 million, because we're actually experimenting on them and we're literally turning them into like soulless killing machines. Except obviously after the experiments and after this time and things died down, clearly they remember these things they've done, and it's not something that any of them, I mean, the scientists might not be remorseful. They're obviously a different kind of class because they were the ones doing the experiments to them rather than acting things out. But, you know, Tony Todd's character, clearly he wants to make up, like, all of us deserve to pay for what we did. Like, that's like one of the lines that he has. So it's a really interesting backstory. I'm always down for shady experiments in the past that have created something like this. It's one of the things I liked about that episode in season 1 with the twins, was the idea of like scientists doing experiments on them and cloning and stuff. Like, I like that type of just, I guess, vibe is the best way I can say it, but that type of intrigue of like some really nasty stuff happened some time ago and we're kind of uncovering it because of the modern day symptoms of it. But I dug all that, and I think the way they showed some of this story by the way Tony Todd makes them see stuff that kills them, they kind of always tell a little bit more of the story. You know, when he goes to see the other guy that was in his squad and kills him at his apartment, it's a sort of firing squad of like injured or even dead, I suppose technically, but like they're standing up people from Vietnam who are bloodied or bruised or beaten, and then they all pick up rifles and start shooting the guy. That actually gives you kind of a hint right there, like combined with the fact that Tony Todd said we have to pay for what we did, and then he's literally executing him with this memory, this ghost of the type of people that, and presumably were specific people that he remembers that they killed. That's like what kills him. That definitely like helps tell the story of, and sets the table for what we're going to reveal as things go on about this being very, very tied to Vietnam and all the things they did. And likewise, the second Doctor, which is later in the episode, he has him killed by showing him the squad at the age they were in Vietnam, coming in their military outfits and picking up scalpels, and they scalpel him. I mean, it's mostly implied because it's, you know, it's still a TV show, they can't show too much of this. But the idea that the doctors cut them open, so now these hallucinations, these ghosts, whatever you want to call them, are going to slice him up because it's what he deserves. It's an interesting thing. Obviously, Cole as a character, Tony Todd's character, is still very much disturbed, even though there is obviously a sense of justice in part of what he's doing. But some of it is also just straight up revenge. The doctors, well, you could say that they still deserve justice. In fact, if anything, they deserve more than perhaps the men themselves. They were the ones who were sort of guinea pigs and turned into something that they weren't. It still feels a little bit like, oh, like these are particularly vicious deaths because they did this to him and the others, and he I mean, maybe I'm wrong here. Maybe it is just about like everyone getting justice who was involved. And yeah, to be fair, they probably do deserve worse than the men themselves, but it does murky up a little bit, but I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it makes sense that he is a little bit murky as a character because his head's supposed to be so scattershot. He says at the end of the episode he's so tired that he's not slept in 24 years. He should be kind of messed up. He should be a little erratic in some ways. Which probably one of the most random things in the episode is that they find him at a motel or something in the middle of the episode because he apparently like robbed a store, and someone said that they seen the guy matching his description, and that felt very random to me because given the powers he has, we see throughout the episode he can literally just make people see things to get away. He does it with Mulder at the train station, where he makes Mulder think he sees the doctor and him, or alternatively you could argue that Mulder does see that, but he makes the other people not see him. Either way, he clearly has the powers of illusion, right? He can completely disguise himself in a scene. So that felt a little bit random to me, and it maybe suggests that he is a bit scattershot and he isn't always necessarily thinking completely clearly, right? Because he could have just, if he was going to steal something from a store, he could do it without anyone ever even realizing it's happened. So either it's a lazy plot device just so we can have a confrontation with him in the middle of the episode before the next big thing, or it's more a representation of his character and how he's not, like, because that's not what he's, if he's stealing some food or whatever because he's hungry, whatever he's doing, that's more just like something he's doing. Like it's not the thing that he's driven to. Everything he's doing with all the people he's hunting, that's like his life mission. That's what he cares about deeply right now. That's what he's fixated on. Anything else you could argue is not getting the same thought or attention. It's just, oh, I need to grab something, so I'll grab it, kind of thing. So I can kind of see the thought process, and I want to kind of give them that benefit of the doubt. Although part of me does think it is just kind of a lazy reason, just so that we can have that extra confrontation with them, because they want to do the whole thing where he makes the two policemen shoot each other to kind of show what's, again, further develop what the strength of his powers and just how dangerous he actually is. But yeah, I mean, all of this plot throughout, I do think is very entertaining. I probably didn't like it quite as much as last week's episode, actually. I think I found the victims being talked to by their various electronical devices and their eventual murders that they commit, or attempt to commit at least. I think I found those just a little bit more entertaining for compared to these hallucinations specifically. Just on a one-to-one comparison, I think those appealed to me just a little bit more. I think one of the things that stuck out to me in this one is that every so often there's the kind of the pan flute or whatever it is that comes in whenever Tony Todd's up to something and he's doing stuff. It gave me a little chuckle because it felt like a little cheesy music cue. It felt a little bit out of place to me. I get what they were going for, but maybe this is just a time thing where now it's such an overused music cue that I couldn't take it seriously. But that said, though, still very entertaining by and large, and a really interesting backstory that did keep me engaged throughout the episode. Of course, there's some other things to talk about. I already mentioned this new Deep Throat, Mr. X. I don't really have much more to add other than what I said earlier, but it's interesting that we have that here. Obviously, it ties into something else that I'm going to talk about here, which is Agent Krychek, who is a prominent character in this episode, who I have somehow not mentioned yet. But conveniently, this sort of saves it to be compartmentalized. See, I can't speak today. I told you. I'm breaking down as a human being. Maybe I need more sleep. So, some of this is fun. This guy claims to have already been looking into the case before Mulder brought it to Skinner's attention. Mulder, of course, gets the tape of the police phone call that the victim made in the opening scene, along with a newspaper explaining what happened, but leaving out some details that make it sound a bit fishy. Mulder wants the case, and he goes to Skinner. Skinner's like, I'll look into it. And then next time we see Mulder, when he's doing some busy work, this Krycek shows up and says, hey, I actually tried to like open that case first, but hey, we're on it. Let's go work it. And Mulder doesn't want this guy. Mulder tries to ditch him as quickly as he can. It's actually kind of funny. But what's more funny, actually, is some of the weird tension when Scully gets involved. Because they go to see Scully to deal with the autopsy, and Mulder talks to Scully a few times throughout the episode, kind of in the same format as we've had in the last couple. And people did point out in the comments that Gillian Anderson was pregnant at this point when they were filming the show, and that's maybe a big reason why she has kind of this very specific role right now. So sadly, it means I'm probably going to have to just accept that this is the status quo for a while. Until she's had the kid, well, I mean, she's had the kid by now, but like at the time had the kid in the context of the show. So anyway, but it was really funny though, because as soon as Krycek walks in behind Mulder, Scully looks at him like, oh, who's your new girlfriend? Kind of like there was a bit of awkward jealousy kind of thing, and in a fun way. Like I'm not complaining about it. It was actually really entertaining. She conveniently doesn't have to shake his hand because she's been handling like a stomach with the latex gloves. So I'm not saying she wouldn't have shaken his hand. Like I'm not saying that. I think she would be very polite. She's not like an asshole. But it is kind of funny that she has a nice genuine reason to not have to be that nice to him. But she explains stuff and whatever. Later on though, it's very sweet when Mulder and Scully are on the phone. And they're talking about the case, but then it turns to like where they're going next. And Scully's like, "Oh, it sounds like your new partner's working out." And he says, "Well, yeah, he's been a lot more open-minded about these crazy theories I have compared to." And she's like, "Compared to me?" He's like, "No, compared to what I thought he would be." It's really funny. Obviously, they're having fun. Like, it's not like a serious jealousy or anything like that, or even even by the right word. But I like that it's not like something the show is trying to ramp up. The show is kind of poking at it because it obviously wants Mulder and Scully back together, and it's kind of teasing us with that. But I like that the characters themselves are making light of it because they see that it's kind of a silly thing to be jealous about or have any awkwardness about. But maybe this idea that Mulder kind of has a new partner maybe makes it feel like, oh, maybe us being separated is permanent now. We'll have to joke a little bit here to make ourselves feel better. So that phone call is kind of funny, but it's also very bittersweet by the end, because they kind of smile, they say a couple of nice lines to each other, and then that's it. They hang up, and it's like Mulder goes off to do his thing, Scully's left at Quantico. So I enjoyed all that stuff, and I figured I'd get that out of the way because the main thing we have to talk about Krycek is that he's a filthy rat. He's been sent to spy on Mulder, even more so than Scully ever was, because the final scene of the episode, he is talking to the smoking man and a couple other high-up shadowy figures, and he's the one who earlier in the episode, Mulder and Scully both have their records, their files about this case stolen, so they have nothing to prove to Skinner that anything's actually went on. Cut to this scene at the end, and basically they're talking about, where did Mulder get this from? That means he's found a new source, or a new source has found him. And then Krycek's the one giving them this briefing, says, and hey, Scully's a big problem. Separating them's only made their bond and their determination to do stuff even greater. She's a big problem. And, ends with an ominous line of, like, the smoking man saying, oh, problems have solutions, which sounds like he's going to have her whacked. I don't think he's actually going to do that, at least not right away. But it's very ominous. It's made play off and this really sort of thing. All of a sudden, him showing up and saying that he already had the case after Mulder already brought it to Skinner makes a lot of sense in hindsight. Obviously, it makes any potential moments of bonding where he's giving Mulder like props, or there's a point where he's mad at Mulder for ditching him, but he makes a whole speech about how, you know, people at the academy made fun of you, but some of us actually followed your cases because we believed you were onto something, that there's more out there than they were telling us. And he really tries to butter him up. He tries to gain his trust. And when you look back through the episode with that lens, that he's just trying to gain Mulder's trust to infiltrate, he's constantly asking questions. In hindsight, especially, it feels like, yeah, he was a bit inquisitive. He was constantly asking, where were you just there? Who did you just talk to? And I'm like, look, I get that he's your partner on this case, but not every phone call he's going to make. He could be calling his dear grandmother for all you know, because he has to check in because she's at the hospital or something. There's reasons that he might make a personal call. So yeah, I mean, all that stuff is fun. The ending was entertaining, and I think it's working regardless of how you feel about the conspiracy stuff itself. I think it's working on a very simple level right now, which is that it's all about whether or not Mulder and Scully will get back together like the old days. And it's weird to say that because we're only on season 2. But they know the audience want that. So by making the entire conversation about Mulder and Scully working or not working together, and the powers that be trying to keep them apart to make them weaker, and us hoping they'll get back together, it's a nice natural like thing for the audience to want to like get mad about, in a good way, like not in like a we're mad at the writers kind of way, but we're mad at the characters and the way that the show wants us to be mad, because we want these two characters to be together and these assholes are keeping them apart. It should make it all the more fulfilling when they do finally get back together. So no, very good stuff. Yeah, that's all the episode. I mean, I think this season so far has not had a bad episode, and the same was definitely not true for 4 episodes into season 1. So the track record is staying a bit higher, and there's been some really solid episodes. I think I might like 2 and 3 more than this one, but I mean, you know, they're all at a nice level. There's no ill will here. It should make making a top 5 at the end of the season quite interesting. If this quality average kind of keeps up, there'll be a lot of juicy episodes to chew on. So let me know what you thought of this episode in the comments, and please do hit the like button if you're watching on YouTube. It helps out a lot, makes more people find the channel. YouTube will share us out a little bit more, the algorithm, all that dreaded stuff. If you want to go above and beyond, you can help keep the lights on by going over to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and supporting us over there for as little as $3 per month and getting some bonuses for your trouble. So yeah. Thank you very much. I'll see you guys next time. I should see what's coming next. Sometimes I forget that I do that at the end of some of these. Episode 5 is called Dwayne Barry. It's just a name, okay? Just a person's name. Here's the description on IMDb. A former FBI agent who claims he was abducted by aliens takes several people hostage. Mulder agrees to be the negotiator. Okay, this sounds good. Sounds like it plays into Mulder's story quite a bit, and this is promising. Anyway, that's me. Thank you very much for joining. I always appreciate it. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?